If you've been stuck in the gym and you're not making progress, this one's for you. We need to understand progression rate and how progress happens in the gym if we want to make sustainable changes long term. Here's what we need to understand about training and progression, all right? There's a progression rate that happens if we put time along the bottom of a scale and we put improvement in percentage form on the y-axis here. What you end up seeing is you see this curve that kind of goes up really sharply and then it levels off and gradually goes and flattens out the farther you go over time. But why? That's the one thing a lot of people forget when it comes to training. If I take a newbie, someone that's never lifted before, here's what's going to happen to them in the gym, all right? We do a couple reps. Their body has never gone through something like that. Their brain's never gone through something like that. You have neurons that attach to muscles, right? They send a signal from the brain down to the muscle. Those motor neurons, they recruit muscle fibers. They create an action at the joint, does the movement you're asking it to do, all right? The thing is, if you're new to the gym, the rate you increase at and improve by is going to be exponential because your brain's figuring it out. It's learning how to take all those signals and recruit those muscle fibers being asked to the joint. It's training them to respond, one, to a smaller signal, and two, it's training them to do it at the same time, okay? You have a motor neuron that's recruiting different muscle fibers. If it can get all those muscle fibers to do its job at the same time, your improvement's going to skyrocket. That's why we call them newbie gains, because you'll see this huge improvement over time. If you're someone that's been going to the gym a long time, though, what happens? You stall, right? You have this huge sharp increase, okay, and all of a sudden things start to level off. I trained for 3 years to add 5 pounds to my snatch. Why? Because it wasn't a neurological thing anymore. It's a physiological thing. That's the one thing a lot of lifters forget is when all of a sudden we start getting to a certain point, we've trained the nervous system to do its job. We've got more muscle synchrony, all right? We've got some synchronization of those muscle fibers. That body's used to doing that movement pattern. Now we've actually got to develop some of the physiological adaptation, all right? We've got to build up some of the density of the sarcomeres, all right? We've got to go through volume phases. We've got to go through intense phases of heavy loading. We've got to be able to develop the physiological adaptations, and those take time. They take exposure, okay? The big thing people forget when it comes to building strength gains is frequency and exposure to a certain stimulus. We want to do all the variety. We want to do all the fancy things. That's great. But if we want to make long and lasting changes, we've got to be exposed to the same movements over and over and over again if we're really going to make any real progress. If we're trying to make progress and we're looking at frequency, it means we ought to be able to take one movement and overload that movement time and time again. Now, here's the tough thing, and this is the one thing we often tend to think about. 1% increase can be very, very challenging, all right? When we look at 5 pounds for a newbie, well, that might be 5%. If a max is 100 pounds, 5 pounds, 5% increase feels great. Well, if I ask an experienced lifter to make a 5 pound or a 5% increase, I might be asking them if they're squat 500 pounds, I want 5% increase. Well, now you're looking at 25 pounds. You're looking at a massive jump, okay? When we look at making progress, we're now trying to get percent by percent by percent. You start to get a little bit more nuance too. If I'm squatting week to week and my max is 500 pounds on a squat, well, every week when I squat, going up 5 pounds, that's probably a little bit more manageable than, say, going up 5%, okay? Because why? Going up 25 pounds from week to week gets a little bit more challenging, all right? And especially as we're chasing those physiological adaptations, right, and we start to get to that tail end of that curve, what ends up happening? We start to get to a point where your body doesn't respond quite as quickly, all right? That's okay. That's one of those things we have to go through. Now, recovery becomes then a factor. If you're training more frequently, you have to be able to recover from it. So your volume is going to have to be in check and regulated. You're going to have to be more focused, all right? But if we can take what we know about general adaptations and general progression, the first thing we have is neurological and all that synchronization, and then we get into the physiological side. The more we can stick with an exercise, the more results we're going to get from it, okay? There's technical pieces. Yes, you'll have to work on those all the time. There's physiological pieces where you're going to have the same exposure, meaning the same reps, the same sets, and trying to just increase the load. Or there's going to be increases in total volume and fluctuating that, all right, in a way that makes sense to be able to recover from it and have that frequency to make progress. So if you're stuck in the gym and you're someone that's really been pushing it all the time, make sure you've got a couple things covered. One, make sure you've got your skill and that your coordination, your neurological adaptations are in place. Two, make sure you've got that frequency down. If you're not hitting the same weight and the same lifts every week, you better figure some things out and change a couple things to make sure you're getting the same stimulus. Or you might have to break that stimulus and change it because you've exhausted the one you're already on. Then make sure you've got your recovery in place. Make sure you've got your nutrition in check, your protein, your carbs, your fats. Make sure you got your hydration in check. If you've got all those things, sometimes then that bottom axis, it's time. And you got to take the time, you got to put in the reps. And eventually, if you can understand those things, you're going to see that progress happen again.